Trek Profiles Podcast, episode 62, recorded February 2022. This is the Trek Profiles Podcast, where each episode we talk with a Star Trek fan. We explore their fandom like the final frontier, and we try to figure out why we all love this show so much. I'm John, your intrepid host of this whole enterprise, and I welcome you to this, the Trek Profiles Podcast, episode 62. If you wish to get in touch with us, you can reach us at feedback@trekprofiles.com or on Facebook or Twitter at Trek Profiles. Warning! As we recorded this episode, it is February 2022, so all previous Trek content up to and including that point is fair game and may be discussed during this episode. You have been warned, Human. As always, my trusty sidekick and co-host is the blissfully behaved, boldly brilliant, yet never boisterous M5 Multitronic unit. Say hello, M5.
The M5 unit is at full power.
Let's do the messages, M5. Put them up on the console.
Messages displayed.
This is an independent Star Trek podcast. If you'd like to support us, the best way you can do that is to subscribe. We are on all the major platforms, and your following us helps other Trek fans find us. Another way you can show your support is to make a donation to our official charity here on the show. That's the Children's Fund for Glycogen Storage Disease. A donation in any amount helps, as they are doing some incredible research to cure this terrible genetic condition. I talked about this a lot on episode 34 of the show. So if you are able and you'd like, please head on over to trekprofiles.com/donate, and you'll see the link there to give directly to the charity. I'll also put a link in the show notes too. So thank you so much for even considering it. There are some lightly edited outtakes and bonus content at the end of this episode. They'll come after the ending audio cards. Enjoy them, or not, as you choose. Let's do the Kobayashi Maru feedback. These are from episode 59 with Tong Tong Boo. Buffer time with Boimler or small talk with Hutch? Tong Tong picked the buffer time, and that was the choice of the Twitter peeps by 93 to 7%. The art of small talk has been lost to you people. All right, question 2. Do you want to hang out at the third shap or with Janeway's lizard babies? My guest picked the lizard babies, and in the poll, it was a very rare 50-50 tie, although I feel like those poor lizard babies could use some company, so maybe throw some love their way. I don't know. Which new Star Trek series would you like to watch? Star Trek Gorn or Star Trek Morn? My guest was all about that Gorn, no trouble, but Morn was the answer online in the poll by 70 to 30%. Which would be worse, an invasion by the Pac-led Armada a la Lower Decks, or an invasion of Space Herberts? Tong Tong picked the Pac-leds, but the Space Herberts were more feared online by 60 to 40%. And finally, which safety violation is worse? Lack of a safety cage on the Ops elevator in Deep Space Nine, no 5-point harnesses or even lap belts on most starships, or lack of a fall protection system on the Narada? My guest picked the 5-point harnesses, and so did all of you, by 55%. Safety cage got 35%, and fall protection system only got 10%. I really feel like people are underestimating the danger without a fall protection system in the Narada, but hey, c'est la vie. Now, if you enjoyed those questions and would like to take a stab at writing your own for possible inclusion in the show, you can send them to me at feedback@trekprofiles.com or DM me on Twitter. I do believe that in this particular episode, we also have some fan-submitted questions, so listen to the end of the episode to find out who it was. All right, that's it for announcements, news, and weather. Let's get to it. M5, start the show. Her favorite regular is Julian Bashir, but her favorite guest is Jennifer the Andorian? What the what? We'll have to find out about that. She loves the Vulcans and that Roomba-looking spaceship, the Defiant 2, from Los Angeles, California, North America, Earth, in Sector 001. It's Ashley Victoria Robinson. Welcome, Ashley, and thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I am so excited to be here. I forgot my answer, so this was a real treat for me.
Oh, you're talking about our pre-recording emails and stuff?
Yeah, I was like, what did I say? Who knows? We'll see.
All right, well, we'll see how this all works out. But the M5 is demanding that I ask you question 1, which is, Ashley, are you a Star Trek fan?
I mean, if I wasn't, I feel like the M5 would forcibly space me, which is probably more of an Expanse reference. But yes, deep cut Star Trek nerd. I very much consider it an important part of my life, and weirdly now my professional life. So being a professional Star Trek fan is not something I saw in my future, but I'm happy that it is my present.
All right, well then let's start there. How does one become a professional Star Trek fan, and what does that entail?
I don't know. I don't know if there's like a straight and narrow answer to that. Mostly being loud on the internet, I feel like is the career path that we're going for here. For me, it really started with not right after I moved to LA, but when I graduated theater school, I wanted to do a YouTube series, which was one of the best pieces of advice that I had from a mentor, Kevin Ramsey, amazing actor and producer in his own right at school, was YouTube was a thing. So why aren't we teaching people that we should be creating content for the space? Because it's easier to, even like what you and I are doing here today, it's easier to start a podcast or like be in the new media sphere than it is to produce a play or create a short film. All you really need is a couple basic pieces of equipment. So I had graduated. I wanted to do a web series. I had never watched TOS in order. So my first thought was, what if I watch TOS in order and talk about that and what the experience is like? And then I met Jason Inman, who is like a king of YouTube. And he said it would be much funnier if it was like a web series and you were playing a red shirt on Kirk's Enterprise. And then we could also sort of simultaneously comment about some of the sillier things that happened in TOS because it was the 60s and the style was different and filmmaking was different. And a lot of things feel silly by contemporary media standards. So I did 31 episodes of that. I did 2.5-hour movie of that. And
you got to give us the name.
The Red Shirt Diaries. If you Google The Red Shirt Diaries, then you can go and watch it. Please don't ask me to make more because Paramount and CBS has strict rules, and I'm not interested in messing with Paramount and CBS. They're nice people.
All right, very good. Well, we will put up a link, of course, to that in the show notes if it's still available.
It's on, if you go to youtube.com/Jawin, that's JAWIN, or if you just search for The Red Shirt, you have to. The is very important because Red Shirt Diaries is a blog that hasn't been active since 2008, and the person who owned it wouldn't sell it to me, so it is The Red Shirt Diaries.
You seem rather bitter about that, but what we shan't dwell on that.
Tiniest bit. I'm a triple Aries, so I can't help it. I'm just always on fire and all consumed at all times. But that was my first like foray into Star Trek on making a Star Trek thing. And after that, I got contacted by Aura.tv, which was Larry King's, I think, short-lived streaming service. I don't think it exists anymore. Mm-hmm. They hired Jason and I to host a show called Collector Trekkie, which never aired. But what was great about it is we got to talk to like Connor Trunier about Enterprise, and Connor is both an amazing actor and like a really handsome person, so that was a real treat for me.
Awesome!
And then it spiraled. I've just done a lot of Star Treks. I've hosted a lot of Star Trek panels over the years. I've been a guest of STLV a couple times, and then Roddenberry scooped me up to start talking about Lower Decks, which was a real treat because Norm Lau beat me out for the co-host spot. But now we get to collaborate together on Star Trek Prodigy. So I don't think I even answered your question, but there's a long and winding road.
Oh, right. Well, as we sit here in 2022, have you seen all of the Star Trek?
So I don't know if I've seen all of the new Trek, but I've seen all of the Trek up through Enterprise. So I've seen all of the OG series. I have not seen all of Discovery because I think it just came back. But in the new Trek world, in this like Alex Kurtzman secret hideout era of Star Trek, there's just a lot of it on at all times. It's like feast or famine, mm-hmm. right? There's nothing, or there's like, I think we're about to have like 3 shows on simultaneously. And I try to focus on what I do for Roddenberry. So like I'm current on Lower Decks, I'm current on Prodigy. And then I am at least a season deep into everything else that's out, but I'm not current on the rest of the shows because, like I alluded to earlier, I'm currently watching The Expanse, and then that's taking up.
There's nothing wrong with that. The Expanse is awesome.
And there's a direct line between Star Trek and The Expanse, right? Like it's the same. But so that's what I've been like binging lately. I'm like in my free time, I'm all up in West. I just love Wes Chatham as Amos. He's the best. I love Keon Alexander as Marco Inaros, which is a hot take because he's so evil. But
I know.
I'm deep in The Expanse, so I will soon be current. But I'd say I'm current-ish most of the time.
Ashley, my question for you is, are you going to commit to seeing all the Star Trek, and by when?
I will commit to seeing it all. Absolutely will not commit to a timeline because I'm not as organized as I should be. I think I'd like to be current by autumn. I think that's a fair assessment. Because I don't think anything is coming out after this next round for a minute. I'm sure they will surprise me because we have big conventions coming up. But yeah, I think by autumn I will be current. So someone will tweet me and then I'll be in trouble.
One of the things that I'm always interested in talking with people like yourself that have sort of even a semi-regular sort of job related to Star Trek is how does working within the Star Trek universe as sort of a semi kind of job affect your fandom?
Ooh, that's interesting. It doesn't. And it affects your fandom in the way that you have to carve out a place in your brain where you can be moderately more objective about something. Because on Roddenberry, it is a review show, but not in the traditional sense. And your opinion does matter, but we do try to err on the side of positivity, which I feel like is very Star Trek-y, or at least that's how I approach it. Like, I am getting paid to talk about something I love. So even if it's not my favorite episode, or even if this character I find irritating, this is still way better than, I don't know, breaking rocks. Like, if someone loves breaking rocks, like, I'm super happy for you, but I'm not strong and I can't. So it's more like if there's a complaint, or if there's something negative, I try to put that in the context of maybe that's just my reaction, and maybe I don't need to say that out loud. Unless you can be validly critical without being rude and being mean, and that's the line that I try to toe. I never try to say that anything sucks, or anything's bad, or anything's garbage, and that's kind of where it comes in. It's just trying to be a little more objective and divorce your fan brain from something. But ultimately, it's a real gift because it allows me to interact with people. Like, people are more interested in interacting with me about Star Trek now than they were like 5 years ago. So it's just so much more of a blessing than it is a curse. I guess the other thing is, like, sometimes I get screeners and I get to see things early, and like, that's a real treat. But then I have to be very careful with remarks I make to be like, oh, but they take care of it like next episode. Like, don't even worry about it, which is a very champagne problem to have.
Yeah, that's definitely some sort of analogous thing to first world problems, right? Oh, I've seen a screener and I can't talk about it.
I couldn't possibly break my NDA. Yeah, it's very first world problems. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, just speaking for myself as a very, 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 very small time podcaster, I mean, certainly one of the things I run across every now and then is when I have to watch a series of episodes because my guest wants to talk about them, or read a book or a comic, or, a fanfic because one of my guests wants to talk about those things, and I am just not liking it. And I'm like, this is terrible. Like, I would not voluntarily read this or I don't want to watch this episode right now because I'm not in the mood for it, and I have to do it anyway. So yeah. It's always a little bit of a struggle. So I'm always curious to see how people feel about that kind of stuff. All right. Are you a collector at all?
I am a collector. It's funny. I'm trying to be less of a collector because there's just...
Says every collector ever.
There's just so much stuff, to be had. I do have to call Ego Moss because I want to know when my next ship is going to ship soon. But with Star Trek stuff specifically, most of what I have is Spock related because I love me some Vulcans, and he's the ultimate Vulcan. So I have a lot of Spock stuff. And then they've really been dragging the heels on the Lower Decks and the Prodigy merch. So I have a lot of the Titmouse Lower Decks t-shirts of the new Trek stuff. That's probably what's most driving my collection. And the Ritos shirt that came out. But I'm waiting for all those action figures. I will buy all of them. But yeah, I'm mostly, an action figure and a tiny ship kind of gal. That's mostly where my collection lies in the Trek fandom.
Fantastic. Well, if you want to send me some photos of those, I will happily post them up on my show notes page, because that is what my listeners want. Is we are all about the fandom and collection stuff.
Making a note now.
Yeah, for sure. In fact, you can see behind me, I have my own Spock art hanging on the wall there. Do you have that one?
I do not, and it's a good one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's I love that thing. And there's my original Klingon chef, by the way, from Deep Space Nine, right up there.
Klingons are scary.
So, what? No, Klingon chef is awesome. Klingon chef is awesome. He's not scary. He's like the friendliest Klingon in the show. He's fantastic.
Yeah, but like warrior cultures, because I'm not strong and I'm not brave. So I whenever I see warrior culture aliens, I'm like, you seem scary to me. I'm gonna be like over here, like I would be the ship's translator. I'm just gonna be like Hoshiing and hooring about. I don't want to fight anyone.
All right, fair enough. Can you recall the first Star Trek episode you ever saw?
So easy. I came home from school and Spike TV, the network for men, was airing. They would, if you get home at 4:00, it was TOS, TNG, DS9, Voyager, and then that was when Enterprise was airing live. So if there was a new episode of Enterprise, it would cap off with Enterprise. And the first episode of Star Trek I ever saw was Arena, which I had seen parodied previously on like Simpsons and Futurama, right? Like the Gorn suit is legendary. And it was the first
Bobby Clark.
Yes, it was the first episode of Star Trek I ever saw. And then I was in a this might age me. I was in an MSN group.
Oh goodness.
And someone in there was doing like a Star Trek like text-based RPG, and I had liked Arena because it's a great episode. And TOS doesn't get enough credit for how good the acting is either in those. Like everyone is just like knocking it out of the park. Shatner with the Shakespeare, like very, very good. And I was like, I've seen one episode of Star Trek. I can do this. This will be great. And then
I see you're a lady of great modesty, Ashley.
Yeah, I said earlier, Aries, so like arrogant, proud. But that trait has served me well, I will say, because if you take a very much like I can do that or I can figure that attitude, then sometimes you do fail spectacularly, but you also do sometimes, like kind of figure it out. So then because I was trying to like keep up with this like message board RPG, I watched all the Star Trek I could get my hands on because I had very limited point of reference. And this was much later than like Star Trek BBS. So like this was kind of my only community that I had initially to talk about Star Trek and learn more about it. And so you don't want to be the one person who seems like an idiot. But Arena was my first episode, and now I live like in good traffic, 25 minutes south of Vasquez Rocks, wherein that was shot. So I've been there a bunch. Love to go and play the Gorn there sometimes.
Fantastic. Well, we'll get a suit for you, and then you'll be ready to go.
Be so sweaty, it'll be great.
When was the very first time you went to a sci-fi or Star Trek convention?
The first time I went to a Star Trek convention was in the summer of, now I have to remember what time is, 2014. It was in between season 1 and season 2 of Red Shirt Diaries. I live in LA, which is like 6 hours from Vegas, again, in good traffic. So it was like, well, why don't we go? We were running a crowdfunding campaign to try to make the money to not shoot in our living room, which we did in season 1. And I still think it looks pretty great for being in our living room in season 1. But in season 2, we built like a corner. So we have like actual cinema flats, which is really exciting. So we went to STLV because I'd never been to a Trek convention before. STLV, I mean, still at this time, in my opinion, at least in North America, is sort of the queen of the Star Trek conventions. I know Reed Pop. I know Chicago's trying to gun for it. But at the time of this recording, it hasn't happened yet. So really wanted to go to STLV. It was close enough. And then we made up some postcards. And we were like, yeah, we can go and we can promote this and we can talk about it and it'll be great. And we did. And that's where I met Dominic Keating for the first time, when he literally ran into me rushing to the bathroom. And he's become a friend since then. So it's funny to me to be like, remember that time that you literally ran right into me? And it was great. STLV is super, if you've never gone, I highly recommend it. It's such a specific convention because I go to a lot of comic book conventions, but if you want to see like two strangers dressed as two different era Klingons see each other across the hallway, yell at each other in Klingon about the honor of their respective houses, and then embrace, there's nowhere like STLV to have that experience.
So I have a little bit of a concern, I think. I don't know if concern's the right word. I have an open question, sure. I think. So let me just ask you about this. I think one of the things that made STLV special was the fact that it was at the Rio, and the Rio is geographically a little separate from the rest of the strip. Mm-hmm. And we kind of take over the hotel. Mm-hmm. And everyone's sort of staying in that hotel or at the Gold Coast right next door. And you're kind of at like Star Trek camp for the week.
Very that.
Whereas this year, they're not going to be doing that because the Rio's under renovations. So it's going to be on the strip in Bally's. And I think there's going to be a lot of other things going on. It's going to be less of that logistical isolation. I'm wondering if it's going to have the same feel.
I think that's a legitimate concern. I think saying concern, I don't think that's I don't think you're being like overreactive or anything like that, because like it is very a vibe of that place. You might be in the swimming pool with Tim Russ. How cool is that? I'm not familiar with Bally's, so like I don't know very much about like if that's a great space for it. I know the Las Vegas Convention Center is great, but I also know that the Rio gave people Legionnaire's disease, so like maybe they should be renovating.
Yeah, no, it absolutely should be. Yeah. Oh, no, I'm not defending the Rio.
No,
it's
I know,
a dump.
But like the Rio is also
know.
it's a great, like it's been a great home for STLV for a long time, but also like they have mold problems.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. I mean, the thing about Bally's, it's connected to the Paris and it's right on the strip, right?
So are we all going to go over to Gordon Ramsay's steak?
You can, sure. And, it's, I just think people are going to be all over the place, and I think there's going to be a lot more activity at the hotel that is not like Star Trek driven. Because there are like, I always feel bad for these poor people who just like book a cool vacation to Vegas and it happens to be the week of the Star Trek convention and they're staying at the Rio and like, what is happening? I know,
and we're all there and like Ira is walking by with his blue beard. Like even if you're not in cosplay, there's always some way that you can be like, these are the sci-fi weirdos. Like you can spot us from a mile away. We're not as subtle people.
No, for a couple of years, I was doing a cosplay from Let That Be Your Last Battlefield. And I'd be in the elevator with people and I'd have a makeup artist come and do my whole head. I mean, I went all out, and I had a suit and it was like full on. And people would just be like, what in the world is happening here? It was always a good thing. So are you now a routine convention goer, or is it still is it something that's tied up with being part of Roddenberry?
So
or how does that work?
Pre-2020, I was a pretty regular convention goer. I'm also an award-losing comic book writer, so I'm often at conventions promoting books or signing books or being on panels or meeting publishers. So like conventions for me are very much work. I've never fully had the like summer camp experience because there's always like something to do, someone to meet, meeting to be taken, stuff like that. Like the only convention that I go to like truly for sport is RuPaul's Drag Con, because it's like the only part of the entertainment industry I am not actively either a part of or trying to be a part of. But post 2020, I much less. Like the only time you're going to catch me outside at a convention is if it is like a work thing. And what's great about Roddenberry is that they are so supportive of everyone and bringing us all out and doing whatever they can, per budget and obligations and facilities and things like that to make sure that as many people can be involved as possible. So for right now, it's very much like a work base, a work only. Because I also I live in such a COVID hotspot and I haven't had COVID. So, and I'm very proud of that, which honestly, it's not particularly a pride thing. It's probably just I'm probably just an asymptomatic carrier at this point, but I'm very nervous about it. So when this gets under control, I'll be back to it all for sport. But right now it's an ad hoc basis, I guess. Like, as far as I know, STLV is the only thing that I might be going to this year, but it's only February, so there's still lots of time.
Ashley, it sounds to me like, as in a lot of your Star Trek fandom, that your enjoyment of the show has been in relationship to some other thing that you were doing. So you started watching Arena, but then you get into this MSN chat group, and then you started watching Star Trek because you wanted to do your role play in the MSN group, and then you're doing the Red Shirt Diary, so you have to watch all the rest of Star Trek so that you can do well in the show. And now you're doing stuff for Roddenberry. So it seems like the actual show itself is sort of like an add-on here.
Deep Space Nine is my only one true and uncorrupted love. It's my favorite Star Trek series, and no one has paid me to talk about it yet. So it is like my purest enjoyment is always all things Deep Space Nine.
Okay, so that one is like that one is just for the love of it, and everything else is kind of.
I think I'm just good at monetizing my hobbies and my interests, which is probably like a mildly toxic trait, but
Fair enough. So, have you? And I know the answer to this is I know the answer to this is yes. Have you ever worn a cosplay?
Yes, I have. It's funny, at STLV, the only cosplay I've ever worn is my costume from Red Shirt Diaries, which was a t-shirt because we never thought I'd be standing up. So it was a very short dress. I'm not like a super cosplayer because I'm very lazy. And I'm not going to hire a makeup artist or a costumer or pay them. And if you do, pay them what they're worth, because that is like a very specific, I'm bad at makeup. So other than when I went as Ensign Williams, I've been Spock for Halloween a couple times because I have pretty short hair. So if I plop the ears on, everyone's like, "You're a boy." Absolutely. But I'm a very lazy cosplayer. So I would consider myself like a casual person who dresses up. Like, I don't want to like put disrespect on like the house of the people who cosplay by calling myself a cosplayer. Like my friend Chris, went as the blue mug from Lower Decks to STLV last year. Like, it's like,
oh, right. I think I saw that.
And it was a crocheted costume. So like, if you saw it, I'm sure it would have stuck in your mind. But like, there are people who do truly genius, like hardcore committed. My friend Adam Drozen in his drag persona has gone as like,
yes, I know Adam very
the
well.
Borg Queen. So like, I don't do that. So like, please, if I'm like, yes, I will wear a costume, like, please don't think that like I'm going to be that high level. Like, the most you'll get out of me is I might brush my hair.
No, actually, I'm with you. And any cosplay I do is something where it's, I have to be able to just like buy the stuff,
Yes.
and I'm not going to spend a lot of money on it. So what I found out is that especially in Vegas, there's a lot of mobile makeup people that do basically bachelorette parties.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right. So they'll come to your hotel and everybody gets made up, and some of them do Halloween. So, you're like, okay, I want you to come to my house and do us all up like zombies. Right. And so I got a hold of one of those people and I said, look, I got a really simple cosplay. I want half of my head in white and the other half in black, and it needs to have a sharp line going all the way around. Like, that's super simple,
and you have very
for them
clear
to do.
reference photos as well, because there's a billion of them. So
yeah, I said, I want this. Yeah, I want this. I have a shaved head, do my whole head, and that's it. And I bought a black and white suit with a black and white shirt and a black and white tie. So everything was black and white checkered. The costume was like $40 at the costume store, but the makeup artist, that was the expensive part, right? But that was, they quoted me a price. I said, yeah. And they came to the Rio at 7 a.m. and did me up, and that was it. It was super simple, right? But like, I'm not one of those people like I can craft something like, okay, I'm building my, I have a friend Chad who like builds all these props and stuff. And I was like, dude, no, I cannot.
Yeah, I'm about to play Medusa at the Wallace Annenberg here in Los Angeles, and they're building me like this headpiece, and the maker who's building it, Alex Sheldon, is a friend of mine, and he's making it all out of like foam and sculpty and like this and that. And right now it just kind of looks like some wires with some styrofoam stuck on it. And he's like, it's going to look great. And I've seen his work, and of course it's going to look great. But I was like, who has the time? like for who has the time? Not I.
Well, the M5 is telling me that we should talk about some episodes. Are you game?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, you've already brought up one of them, which is Arena. So I want to know, if we didn't talk about it already, what specifically about that episode really drew you in?
So when I first saw it, it was the idea that I knew people thought it was silly. But I found it so compelling. And I think we look at Kirk sometimes through the lens of the movies, because in some of the later movies, he gets to be a little caricature-y and a little more silly. And Kirk is like a by-the-book character who will achieve what he is supposed to through the actions of a cowboy. But I think we think of it more as the loose cannon cowboy. And I think Arena is such a perfect like illustration of that and like microcosm of that, because he does what is put before him, which is this arena gladiatorial style battle, but he won't take that last step of killing his opponent, because that's not Starfleet and that's not Kirk. And I think it's such a great like first episode of Star Trek to be like, yes, you can see the seam in the costume, especially now that we have it in HD.
Oh, yeah.
But to borrow the mission log phrase, the morals, meanings, messages really shine through there. And then the craftsmanship, like it is beautifully shot against an incredible landscape with some props that, do they look appropriately heavy? No. Are they well crafted? Absolutely. The costumes are great. You get the classic Kirk rip shoulder, and the acting is really solid. So like, I just think Arena like doesn't get enough credit because we think of it as like the silly one with the guy in the lizard suit. And it's also not the only one they shot at Vesca's Racks, but it has that most iconic shot, which then they replicated over and over again in '09 when they blew up Vulcan. So I just think Arena's great, man. And I think we need to put more flowers on it.
So then let me ask you this. If someone was to come to you who was just an acquaintance and say, Ashley, I know you know a lot about Star Trek. I might want to check out just one episode or two. Would you recommend Arena sitting here in 2022 as a starter episode?
So that depends, right?
That's why I said they're an acquaintance. This isn't someone you know really well. They're just an acquaintance.
It depends on if they've seen, because most people now have seen at least one of the newer movies. So if you have the primer of like, this is the Enterprise, this is Starfleet, this is Kirk and Spock and McCoy. And it depends on, some people think that things made before 1999 aren't worth watching. So it depends on if they're sort of that like Xbox generation. But I think somebody who like maybe has seen one or two Star Trek movies and is willing to watch something a little older, I would recommend it. I actually am probably coming around on thinking that Prodigy is going to be the easiest intro into a television show, because it is so for like a new person. But I think Arena is a good first episode, especially if they want Kirk and Spock and McCoy. Like if you want the most famous characters, I think you could do a lot worse.
So, note for future reference, at this time code, Ashley casts aspersions on the millennial Xbox generation. All right, M5 catalog that.
I'll fight you right. If you think that if you think Batman the Animated Series is where entertainment starts, like, you're wrong.
I'm giving you a little bit of a hard time, but I thought that was funny.
Come for me, Gen Z. I don't understand TikTok.
I don't understand your tick book, all this kind of bliggity blog, face spacey.
I don't know what it is.
Oh my gosh. The old's making fun of the youngs. Okay. Well, turnabout's fair play. It's okay.
There we go.
So let's talk about some Deep Space Nine. And the M5 tells me that we should talk about Far Beyond the Stars, which is Season 6, Episode 13. Certainly an episode that has a tremendous amount of production value and certainly some very special and profound messages in it. But I want to know about your personal connection to this episode and why you find it meaningful and or powerful.
It is my favorite episode of television.
All television.
All television.
All right, say more.
It's probably competing with like the episode of MASH where Trapper gets an ulcer. That's like his proper goodbye before they just punt him off at the end of season 3. Like that's pretty high on my list. Or God Walks Into A-Bar from the 2019 Watchmen series. Those are like probably the top 3 contenders. But one of the reasons I love Deep Space Nine so much is I love Avery Brooks, and I love Avery Brooks as Captain Sisko. Now, you can't see me, listeners, but I am a white woman. And my next statement often jars people because I am a white woman. But Avery Brooks as Captain Sisko just reminds me of my dad. And this is where I get a flood of tweets that say, but you're white. And it's like, yes, use your imagination. My dad was a career military officer. We moved around a whole bunch. And I was like a weird artistic kid. So like, and my dad is dead now. So like, Sisko just gives me like happy dad vibes. And Avery Brooks is, I think of all the captains, of all the I won't speak about new Trek because obviously those series have not ended yet, but I don't think he gets his due as an actor because he comes from that stage tradition where he is very theatrical. Like Avery Brooks is so fun to do an impression of because he comes from opera, so it's a lot of like, why are you making me do this? But like the inflection is real, all of the consonants are heard in every word. But it gives him this gravitas and this incredible leadership as Cisco that I find so comforting and so grounding and so lovely. And far beyond the stars and in the pale moonlight, really, I think, give him an opportunity to show off in this really exciting way that's not just a space battle. Like Far Beyond the Star is, I guess, it's basically a holodeck episode in terms of it's not, right? Because it's inside his mind, but or an Elseworlds or a what if story where we don't get to see anybody doing what they traditionally do. I love being able to see the actors under the makeup as well.
It's great.
Because DS9, all the aliens have very, very heavy makeup, even if it's just something on their nose. And we get to just see what a powerhouse that entire cast is. And to its, I think perhaps to its credit and its detriment, as they explore in the documentary, DS9 is like incredibly progressive for showing a Black father on TV raising a son, and he's a professional and he's a single parent, and Jake is well adjusted and loved. And Deep Space Nine both like does and does not lean into what that meant for the 1990s when it was airing. And Far Beyond the Stars is one of the clearest examples of actually getting to explore what it means to have this type of show telling these type of stories led by an actor who looks like Avery Brooks. And I think it takes all of, again, you could tell I'm like a Roddenberry gal, it takes all the morals, meanings, and messages and makes it the most sci-fi episode of the whole series by wiping away all the sci-fi details humanly possible. And every time I've seen some of the Benny sketches, up at a couple auctions over the years, and they always go for like more money than I can, but like that's my white whale of like Star Trek collectibles, is to have one of the sketches from that episode. But I don't even know if I have a particularly like excellent articulation, but it's the episode that has stuck with me the most, that I've revisited the most. And whether I'm working on whether I'm like preparing a role or I'm writing something, like there's always something to be gleaned, and I cry when I watch it. So it's just the best. It just gives me all the vibes that I want. And my space dad is in it. And like my like number one Star Trek crush, Julian Bashir, is in it wearing a suit. Like there's just nothing not to like.
So it sounds like you have taken something from Star Trek to use in your acting career.
I mean, that might be me flattering myself, but William Shatner, arguably, but had a huge point of his acting career in Stratford, Ontario, at the Stratford Festival. That's where when I decided to be an actor, I did a lot of training in Stratford and in and around there. So like that's always been Star Trek, and you know, my fellow Canadian has always been like an important touchstone. But I like to look at characters or archetypes in Star Trek where they're similar, but they're achieving something that I'm struggling with, because Star Trek is a hard job, and it's a lot of gobbledygook and a lot of technobabble, even if you're not playing an engineer.
Right.
And I think in every production that you approach, there's always one or two lines that you just like, this won't live in my brain. I don't know what it means. And it might just be like an absolutely boring, normal phrase that you're used to hearing. And when I go and I watch what those actors do and what they sometimes do with nothing or very little, it's really, really inspiring. I think Rene Auberjonois does that as Odo. Like Odo could have so easily just been like a grumpy police officer. And it's been talked about, but it's the way he interacts with Kira and the way he looked at Nana Visitor. That's what spurred their love story. And I think Scott Bakula, particularly in season 1 of Enterprise, where they're trying to figure out like, what is this show gonna be? Which happens in the first the first seasons of all the Star Trek shows, right? Yeah. Is like, is this a clone or are we doing something new? Like he has these silly lines And he chooses specific words, or he'll put a pause in there, and it gives it a gravitas, and it gives Archer this like real sense of knowing what he's doing, which is what you really want from, even though it's a reboot, right? The first ever captain. And it's things like that I really find inspiring and really helps me when I'm struggling. This play that I'm prepping for, I have the first opening monologue, and it's about 9 lines on the page, and there's no punctuation in it, which is
delightful.
Terrifying. I'm an actor because I want you to tell me what to do, like I don't want to make the decisions. And being able to go back and see like greater actors than myself do that to aplomb, and they've had to do multiple takes, is just really, really inspiring.
Well, let's talk about some Enterprise, since we happen to be showing some faith of the heart. Let's talk about Season 3, Episode 10, Similitude, which the M5 tells me is a particularly meaningful episode for you. You're laughing. This is a very serious episode. Why are we laughing?
Devastating episode. So you might have gleaned from earlier, I love Connor Trinneer. I think he's fabulous. When this was Similitude is the first episode that made me cry watching Enterprise. And it's awesome. And it's pretty much just like the Connor Trinneer show, really. And
Mini Connor and Mini Connor.
And Baby Connor, yeah. And I tweeted at him and I said, "F you for making me cry watching Similitude." And then he tweeted me back and was like, "Sorry, not sorry." And I was like, I'm really glad that like there's no tone on the internet, right? There's particularly no tone on Twitter. It could be really hard. So it's like, I'm glad he understood it was a joke and was like really lovely about it. And then I got to work with him a couple years later on the Larry King Star Trek show that never made it to air. And I was like, remember when I tweeted like you and you? And he was like, I do. And then I saw him at Ostilvio a couple times. And then when the first big women's march happened in LA in 2016, me and Jason Inman and Adam Drozen went to a Roy Choi restaurant to eat after, and like Connor Trinneer walked in and was like, "What's up, guys?" So Similitude is like important to me because like it's an incredible episode. It's carried by a character who I'm learning. I thought everyone loved Trip because like I love Trip. And Jason loves Trip, and I'm learning that Trip is a real like mixed bag. Like some people don't like him, which hurts me deep down in my soul. But it's his best episode. It's carried by this character who like could have been silly. It's really inspiring from like a performance standpoint, but it also like kicked off this like weird trend where just like every like 2 to 4 years, just like Connor Trinneer and I like roll through each other's lives for like a minute. If anyone here watches the second season of the Red Shirt Diaries, there's a book on my shelf in the background, and it's called Catfish and Plasma, and it is supposed to be Trip's autobiography. And
awesome.
I made Connor Trinneer sign it.
Send me a picture of that.
Okay. I'll see if I can dig up the one where we're all holding it. But I can definitely, it's over there. No one can see. It's over there on a shelf, and I will keep it forever. But Similitude, like if you're sleeping on Enterprise because you think it's silly, like you're absolutely wrong. You might need a spirit guide, which is what I had someone be like, you could probably skip this episode. But to be fair, you could probably use that for most Star Trek shows. And when Enterprise really kicks in and then we like get into the Xindi arc, it is incredible. And like, I will die on the hill of like, canceled too soon. Should have brought it back for more. And also everyone in it is fabulous, and Jolene Blalock doesn't get enough credit for what a good actor she is.
Let me just tell you, I have been live tweeting my grand watch through of Star Trek for years now, and I stick to every episode in order, and I'm getting very close to the end of Enterprise season 3. And the one thing I will say is Jolene Blalock has consistently been tremendously impressive in the role. Just the way that she responds, the way she doesn't respond, her facial expressions, just everything about her in the show has just been spectacular. Her and John Billingsley are literally the stars of the show, in my opinion. They steal every single scene they're in, and their scenes together are always amazing.
The
Always.
Denobulans are great for any writers on how to make an alien truly feel alien, but also still charming and recognizable. Like the episode where like his wife is hitting on Trip and he's like, you should go for it. She's great. Like it is so alien. I think we're getting a little past that now, but the idea of like the polyamory, but like it's so and Phlox is basically like, he's the closest thing to Bones we've had. He just has better bedside manner because he's such a frontier doctor. Ugh.
All right. Well, we're going to talk more about that in a little bit. Not specifically Phlox, but I want to talk to you about this whole idea of aliens being alien. Mm-hmm. So I got something queued up for that. But let me ask you about a Lower Decks episode quickly before we jump into that, which is Lower Decks Season 2, Episode 10, First Contact. So here's our Season 2 finale. Mm-hmm. And the M5 tells me that you have a particular fondness for this episode. So I want to know about that.
So I know Mike McMahon. I've known him for a long time. He used to shop at the comic book store that I used to work at. I remember when he was tweeting his TNG season 8 and then the book came out. So like I was so thrilled when he got on this. Mm-hmm. But I hadn't watched Rick and Morty yet, and the discourse around Lower Decks was all like, this is Rick and Morty, Star Trek. And I was like, I don't know. Do I want this? I've since watched Rick and Morty, and if I had watched it before, I would have known that, like, yes, I do want that. And so, like, Lower Decks to me, I was like, okay, well, we'll see how this goes. And Prodigy was kind of the same thing. I was like, Nickelodeon, like Avatar: The Last Airbender? Okay, we'll see. And they're, like, my two favorite Star Trek shows right now, so it shows what I know. So like Lower Decks has just continuously surprised me, and I'm so lucky. Like it was such a great sign from the universe when John Champion reached out and was like, you want to cover Lower Decks with us? And I was like, yeah, I guess I'm watching. I guess I'm not binging. I guess I'm just going to watch Lower Decks like every week. Okay, great. Super. Let's do it. And First Contact makes me so happy because even though it's the end of the second season, it really feels like the completion of all of the characters' first arcs. And I am mad that Tendi and Rutherford haven't kissed yet. And I am mad that they don't seem to be going in that way because I really want them to smooch. But they're the supporting characters, but they're my favorite characters on the show. And First Contact is always a trope I'm here for. I like it every single time. Prodigy got an episode called First Contact. Like, I'm never not here for a First Contact episode. They're always fascinating. And I love the way that Mike explores turning the idea of it on his head while also having all four leads really come into their own. And this type of growth it's pretty standard for Star Trek, but it's tougher in adult-centered animation. And I think it is a masterclass in, like, if you're writing an essay on Star Trek, but it's a television show, like, it's the perfect conclusion. And I'm so glad that we're getting more of it, but man, it's so good. And it's the first episode of Lower Decks that also made me cry. So use a theme. All my favorite things make me cry.
Oh, that's very sweet. I personally love Lower Decks because I actually was Lower Decks. I was in the Navy, and I was a guy who worked in the reactor plant on a submarine. So I am very, very attuned to what Lower Decks life is like. And so I identify, man. I get it.
Yeah.
I actually was the guy putting the yellow food dispenser into the cartridge into the food dispenser.
Banana, hot.
Yeah, exactly. So the M5 tells me I'm to ask you about seeing Star Trek 2009, the film.
Yes. So it's funny. I mentioned earlier when I was talking about Cisco, I like just dropped this bomb because I always forget. It's a weird thing to tell people that my father passed away. And I saw Star Trek 2009 in the big theater in downtown Ottawa, capital city of Canada. And I went to see that and Up back to back, being like, cool, like sci-fi movie, Pixar movie. This is going to be like a super fun, happy time. I went with my friends Jamie and Julie and John, and I cried in the first 10 minutes of both of those movies. And I was like, what the f***? This is a Star Trek movie, and this is a Pixar movie. Why am I crying in like the opening teasers of both of these movies? And it's just like when I think about Star Trek memories, I just remember like bawling my eyes out in the opening sequence of that. And then when the cast of Thor was announced, I was like, James Kirk's dad is gonna play Thor. Okay, I guess so. Because I didn't know Chris Hemsworth from anything else except dying in the first 12 minutes.
Dying hardly, yeah.
But also as like a diehard Vulcan fan, I really like Zachary Quinto's Spock. I think he brings a lot of that. Like Leonard Nimoy's Spock is like, raise your eyebrow, say fascinating, but mean you. Or mean like everyone here's an idiot. Like there's such a rich subtext here. And which I think comes from a lot of the theater training. I put a lot of credit on theater actors because I just think that's where all the best actors come from. But Zachary Quinto, I think, does a really great job at bringing like that energy, but putting it a little more on Front Street. And I think the way that he evolves Spock into being an action hero for a film versus like the id aspect of an ongoing television show. I was going to say a serialized television show, but definitely not an ongoing television show. I think is a really, really interesting update and exploration because it's so easy. Like we were talking about Jolene Blalock and her brilliance earlier, but it's so easy to play a Vulcan who's just kind of cold and distant. And I was worried about that. And I was pleasantly surprised that one, I had such a strong emotional reaction to the beginning. And two, that like they did, even though they murdered them all, they did right by the Vulcans.
Whenever the subject of 2009 comes up, I always want to just do a shout out to my favorite captain that we did not get enough of, and that's Captain Robau. So he's always the guy I think of and say, captains I want more of was that guy. And I feel like I just wanted more of him in anything.
Another good Canadian actor. And then Bruce Greenwood's Pike. I mean, I know we all love Anson Mount, but like Bruce Greenwood's Pike is also top notch.
Oh, top shelf. Absolutely. Okay. Well, I've got something else here to ask you about that is the first time it's ever come up on Trek Profiles, which always pleases me. And you wanted to talk about a novel. Ashley, you want to talk about The Lives of Dax?
I do.
From 1999, which, of course, I had to read in preparation for this. So I think my listeners may not be familiar with it. So let me just give a quick overview that essentially it's a novel of short stories. And each one of the short stories is by a different author, and they all focus on one of the particular lives of the Dax. So there's an Audred story, a Tariah story, an Emily story, and so on. And it kind of has a bookend with Ezri. So it starts with Ezri, ends with Ezri, and she meets up with Vic Fontaine. Not giving any spoilers here. Well, we're going to spoil it. There's no way to talk about it without spoiling it, but she meets up with Vic Fontaine in the holodeck because she's going on a date with Julian, one of your faves. And basically, she sits down with him and tells him the story of all of her past lives. Mm-hmm. And that's the book that you're reading. And then kind of Ezri wraps it up at the end. And every one of the stories is very different, certainly from a different historical period. And also has a very different tone because they're by different authors. So I think that's enough of a prelude. Let me turn it over to you, Ashley, and tell me what in this particular series touched you.
So my number one Star Trek crush is Julian Bashir. And then like right below that is William Riker. But like on par with Riker is Jadzia Dax. Like I love Jadzia Dax so very much. I don't think it's a shocking thing to say because she's very beautiful, very talented, very capable character and actress. Mm-hmm. And when I watched the series and she died and Ezri got introduced, you know, like everyone, you're like, I don't want this. What is this? And my local library had a whole shelf of Star Trek novels, which I had been reading through. And so at that time, I picked up I was called the Dax biography. And I know there are episodes where we see different aspects of Dax, either ceremonially represented or in flashbacks or reference, right? Curzon is probably the most well-rounded of the other, not personas, but the other
lives.
Yeah, of Dax. But I think because this is prose and you can just absorb a lot more information over a longer period of time, this book gives me all the feels that I wanted in all of the previous. We are revisiting a Dax story, and it reveals really interesting aspects of them. And I can't pull for the life of me the name of the murderer, Dax.
Joran.
Thank you. My brain was like, Curzon. I'm like, there are more than just Curzon. And when we see Joran, that story is a little like shunted to the side, which often happens. Like, yes, but no. but it's kind of the most full flushing out that I think that character has ever had. It's a quick read. Like, you could read it on a plane and you would be done with it. But one of the things that I most like about Ezri, and I do think that the character and, poor Nicole DeBoer is a little short shrifted by not having longer on the show. I think if we'd had more time with her, I think we would have warmed up on her soon. Like, now everyone's like, we're sorry, we were mean. You're actually great.
No, Ezri is fantastic and has nothing but fans on this side of the microphone. I will tell you that.
Exactly. But I mean, and I feel like I would have been reading this in like 2004 or 5. And I feel like even then it was like, we don't know about Ezri. But now we're all like, no, we was wrong. But something I really like about her is I like that her and Julian get to be together, because it was absolutely not correct that it would have been Jed. Like from jump, it was never going to be Jadzia. But I really like Ezri and Julian because they make sense to me in terms of like personalities, and you kind of get to like eat your cake and have it too in that way. Yeah. And bookending the biography of the lives of Dax, kind of with this sweet romance or budding romance that we're familiar with to the show, I found very satisfying just like as a fan and in my shipper brain. But this book gave me what I always wanted from the Dax Trill episodes, and perhaps it's because I could spend as much time with it or read and adjust and read in as much as I wanted to. But whenever I think of the best Star Trek books, this is always the one that came to mind. So when there was the option to bring up a book, I was like, ooh, we're doing the Dax biography. I can't wait.
Oh, it was very good. And I thank you for putting it on the list, because it made me read it. So I'm going to give you 2 things to respond to. One's good. One annoyed me. So and I'll let you see how you want to respond to this.
Sure.
First, one of the things I think is really great about all Star Trek novels and all sci-fi novels really is that you can do things on the printed page that you just can't do in the show. And we were talking earlier about aliens being alien, and there's an alien race called the Aziz in this book, and it's actually in the Curzon story. And one of the things I just loved is that this particular set of aliens is so alien that it is nothing they could ever put on the screen. It's the one where it's basically one giant organism divided into these different bodies. And there's a bullfrog type character called the Poet that kind of keeps it all together. And it was just amazing. And if you read the story, you're like, this could never be in the show. Like, even with an unlimited special effects budget, it would just, some suit would be like, we don't really need to do all this. Just like, just no. And you'd get something that was much less cut down. So I really love that element of it. One of the things that annoyed me is something that I think is something that comes up with a lot of Star Trek for me. And it's that it has a lot of small universe syndrome. Yes. Because literally every single story involves our other Star Trek characters. And, there's T'Pau and Odan. There's Scone. Oh, that's not a Vulcan name you would throw around without like us deep cut Star Trek fans knowing who Scone is. Emily has an affair with Leonard McCoy.
Yeah.
And like,
that doesn't live in my headcanon.
But I mean, it's like every single Dax life has some kind of run in with a Star Trek character from, and it's like, okay, I get it. But like, it's sort of like wasabi, a little too much spoils the dish. You got to kind of parcel it out a little bit. I don't know. It kind of bugged me a little bit. The
wasabi comparison is like incredibly apt.
Because this one, they go for it, and I think part of it too is that it's by different authors. So they all wanted their own, swing at it. And they felt the need to put in a reference to another Star Trek character at some point. But it got to be a little much.
It also came at a time where I feel like the Star Trek tie-ins, whether it was comic book series or I think they were a little less stringent. Maybe there was a little less oversight than there is. Obviously, there's a lot now because we understand like the power of brand synergy and IP in this really weird like post-internet culture. And I feel like I think about the Del Rey books, even like the Stargate tie-ins, and you're like, what is happening here? Why is everyone in the universe on this planet for these 24 hours?
All right, fair enough. Well, we talked a little bit about your lifetime, really, of involvement in Star Trek, Ashley, and you've been involved. Now you're a semi-professional Star Trek fan, I think I would say. If that's the most accurate term, you can dispute that if you want. I guess I want to ask you why Star Trek matters to you.
Big question. Star Trek matters to me because it lets you know, no matter what, everyone has a place in the universe. And it's a theme that I really like about Lord of the Rings, which is like the other side of the sci-fi fantasy coin that I really love. There's a Galadriel quote that like even the smallest person could change the course of the future. And I feel like Star Trek very much leans on that. And it's also given me some of the best things in my life. It's given me jobs and opportunities and friendships and relationships. And it's more than just a television show. Like Chernobyl's a great television show that you then go on and never watch again because it's devastating. And you're not going to go as a teenager and find an MSN group and build lifelong friendships that you still have out of it. I think what I love about it is something that Norman Laus said recently. It's not, I watch it not because I'm afraid that the Enterprise or the Cerritos or whatever, the Protostar isn't going to make it through. I'm interested in how it makes it through and how it changes people. Star Trek is ultimately character driven. The rest of it is just cool set dressing. And I like the humanist aspect of it. And I feel like engaging with the fandom, engaging with other people, and working like in or adjacent to Star Trek also makes me a better person. So I'm not religious, so maybe it's the closest thing I have to a religion at this point.
Well, I've enjoyed our conversation, Ashley, but the M5 is signaling me that it's time for the Kobayashi Maru. The Kobayashi Maru is a challenging and difficult test, cunningly prepared by the M5 just for you. Should you not only survive the test, but pass it as well, the M5 will award you an honorary Star Trek title on behalf of our little program. Are you ready, Ashley?
I don't think I could possibly be ready, but let's do it.
M5, load the Kobayashi Maru simulation and prepare to record our guest responses.
Simulation loaded and ready for use.
Pick your first bridge station: weapons, helm, science, or communications.
Communications.
Recommend the better vacation spot: Betazed, Bajor, or Bolaris.
Ooh, Bajor.
Time for a nice lunch of fresh Breguet lungs. How much graphic sauce? Lots and lots, a little bit, or none at all?
Lots and lots.
Saturday night game time: Damjot, Caddiscot, or Calto.
Damjot.
Time to put away the synthahol and drink the real stuff with friends. Do you turn up the rock and roll on the jukebox and drink tequila with Zephram Cochrane and Counselor Troy? Or do you sing old English folk songs and drink whiskey with Chief O'Brien and Dr. Bashir?
I gotta go. I gotta drink with Chief O'Brien and Dr. Bashir. There's just no choice.
Simulation complete. M5, please compute the results and tell us if our guest has passed the Kobayashi Maru.
Analyzing.
Very good answers. Outstanding.
Thank you. That was fun.
Ashley, I am pleased to tell you that the M5 has calculated that you have passed the Kobayashi Maru simulation. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And now, the M5, who has analyzed your answers, will award you an honorary Star Trek title on behalf of our show. M5, what title shall we award our guest?
Ashley is awarded the title of Lead Hollow Runner for the Federation Recreation Division.
So there you go.
Oh my God, what a dream. I would love that. Thank you.
So, Ashley, please tell people how they can get in touch with you and follow your various goings-on and see you perform and carry on the conversation.
Okay, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Ashley V. Robinson. The V is very important because Ashley Robinson is a WNBA player. I don't want to fight for SEO. She is taller than me. Please send me cute pictures of Sadiq Al-Fadil at any point in his life, but particularly when he's Julian Bashir, because he's just a great-looking man. You can find me in the Roddenberry podcast feed right now. I am doing Mission Log Prodigy. When Lower Decks comes back, I'll be on that. Even though Prodigy is in hiatus, we're doing a lot of cool supplementary materials, so Norm and I are still putting out regular content. Please check that out. If you would like to hear me talk about other things Star Trek or all things geek, I have a podcast called Geek History Lesson. We have over 400 episodes. You can get that where all your fine podcasts are had. We interviewed Dominic Keating and Dave Rossi last year, so there's a lot of recent Star Trek episodes that we just covered, Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. You can buy my books at ashleywictoriarobinson.com/store. They are all signed there and primed to go to your home. If you listen to this in the month of March, I have a Kickstarter. It's called Aurora and the Eagle. It is a 48-page prestige comic book adventure about Aurora Borealis, Canada's premier superhero, moving to America to train with the Eagle, America's greatest superhero, to see if she joins the Unity League. And they uncover the mystery of who killed her predecessor. So that's going to be on Kickstarter in the month of March. March is my birthday, so come and give me a birthday present and kickstart my comic, please. And if you want to see me live on stage, I'm going to be at the Wallace Annenberg Center for Performing Arts in Beverly Hills in Reckoning the first week of March. You can find those tickets in my bio, or if you just go to the Wallace, I think it's the Wallace.org or the WallaceAnnenberg.org. It's called Reckoning, a short play festival. I play Medusa, amongst others. I think those are all my plugs.
Fantastic. Ashley, thank you so much for being part of Trek Profiles.
Thank you for having me. I was so excited to get invited, and I've truly had an amazing time.
Here ends this installment of the Trek Profiles podcast. And before we offer a Trek quote to close this episode, I'd like to remind you that you may send us your astute assessments of the show, your retorts of rage, or animated gifs of a Horta learning to twerk to feedback@trekprofiles.com or on Facebook or Twitter @TrekProfiles. Anything you send me may be used in the show, or it may be held in permanent suspended animation in the transporter buffer. Some portions of the Kobayashi Maru lightning round questions in this very episode were written by listener Adam Saunders. I encourage every one of you to send me in your ideas for questions, and I thank Adam for his contributions. This time, I leave you with a quote from Lieutenant Shax, who in the episode First Contact said, quote, "You're lucky I'm so spiritually centered, or I'd snap." Close quote. Thanks for listening, and live long and prosper.
This handcrafted podcast is brought to you by Stars and Sky Media Lab. It's cosmic.
Any questions?
No, I'm actually super excited. This sounds like a lot of fun.
All right. Well, I hope so. It's important to me to keep that my guests have a really good experience on the show. Because that helps me get more guests. You know, like I never want anyone to say, "Oh man, I recorded with that guy. Frickin' sucked."
You'd be shocked how many people want to gotcha.
Oh, you mean?
Yeah, like people will just like bring stuff up where they're trying to like sideline you, and I'm like, this is not nice.
No. Although I will say this, I do press my guests on assertions and things because I'm the only conversation partner.
Yeah.
And so I want to like have a real conversation. I just don't want it to be like, there's this little Family Guy clip that I often send to guests sometimes where like he's doing I don't know if you've ever seen Family Guy, but there's a Kiss call-in show that he does. And like someone goes, "All right, let's go to our next caller. Kiss rules." And he goes, "Yeah, good call." And he hangs up, right? I'm like, that is exactly what I don't want to do. So I would say one of the interesting things about The Expanse is how I think Amos went from like sort of like the second tier character at the beginning of the show, like a guy who was there, to all of a sudden people are just like, "Amos, I ship it."
I love him.
I just want more.
So much. He does. Look, he's very handsome, which is like a big plus, obviously. But
sure,
what Wes Chatham does with that character is like next level. And I binge watched it, so I watched none of it live. And to see the choices that he's making in season 1 as very much a supporting character up through, I hope you're current-ish, in season 5.
I've seen it all.
I haven't seen the 6th season, but what how that directly leads to like what he does with Peaches and I guess I try not to spoil it for everyone else, but his heroism in that journey and what you sort of learn about his past, you're like, oh, that was there in season 1, and it just took this long to kind of unravel the threads. But I mean, yeah, he is high key my favorite character. I think Naomi is probably the best character overall. And I also really love her, and Dominique Tipper is like stunning and so talented. But yeah, it's really funny that Amos has kind of emerged because he's not like a good dude, but he's just all of our favorite like space thug.
And every time he says Peaches, I have a big stupid smile on my face for some ridiculous reason.
And he's like trying to bring her onto the Rossi, and he's talking to Holden, and he just runs back and like grabs her hand and is like, "Great, thanks, boss." Like he's so cute. I love it. I want them to be married and be happy together forever.
Oh my God, so wonderful. All right, well, I shan't spoil anything for you, and we shall leave the question of Amos nuptials in the wind for you to find out. Yes, for another time. This might go in the bonus content, so we'll see. We'll have a little... So if people want that, they can always go back and listen to the podcasting extravaganza. It's 3 episodes, 10 hours of content between all 3 of them. But I don't recommend anyone start there. What I always tell people about my show is if you want to try it, go to any episode that has a person's name, and that's an interview, and that's like a very typical episode. And the great thing is they're all one-offs, right? So you can start anywhere. You don't have to listen to the whole thing. You know, you can jump around, whatever you want. Anyway, we are getting far afield. Yeah, I don't mind it. I love a diversion, but I'm more worried about the time. So I want to get right into it. No. It's all good. It's all good. Look, I've had some of these go over 3 hours. I released a 5-hour podcast one time. So I'm
I got to add that to my queue then.
Oh, well, that's great. And if you have a link to where people can buy tickets for that, please let me know, and I will happily tweet all that. Yeah, you get free promotion from my minuscule Twitter account for whatever that's worth.
See, that's the thing that I think you shouldn't undersell, because a dedicated audience of any size is gold. But also, you have people in your pond that I don't have at my pond, and I would like them to be in my pond. So...
Oh, no, I will always retweet whatever you got going on if you got something to promote. So but the thing is, I may not see it. So don't be afraid to just DM me and say here's the thing. So my friend Andrew Heaton, he just wrote a book. I don't know if you know Andrew, but he wrote some books and he's doing some comedy bits. So I retweet all that stuff. And anybody who's been on the show, Alex August, who has just released an audiobook that she'd been producing for a year. So I was flogging all that too. So happy to do that. It's part of what you get for being an alumnus of the show.